Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to make a video of my tarot reflections, and today I've chosen the tarot card, the Chariot from the Marseille deck. And I'm going to talk about some of my reflections about the Chariot card. And my reflections about the Chariot card are coming based on meditations on the tarot book. So these are some of my reflections on the Chariot card from the chapter in the book where I have reflected on some of the many ideas that are in the chapter. I have spent time this week, part of the week, just looking at certain parts of the chapter that particularly resonate with me. And I'm just going to talk about some of the particular things in the chapter that resonated with me, and talk about, first of all, what the ideas are in the chapter, the particular things that sort of caught my attention for me to reflect about afterwards. So here is the Chariot card. I always think of this card as the charioteer, and which is the person in the chariot rather than the chariot itself. And I get the impression in the chapter of the book that the author is talking more about the charioteer very much. There are different symbols mentioned as well, but it's particularly from the vantage point of the charioteer. So I wanted to make that point. So just to talk about some of the things that I noticed in the chapter when I was browsing the chapter, and the particular things that I want to reflect upon. One of the main things that the author is saying is that for him the Chariot card is about mastery, and I think this is about mastery as well, and it's really the mastery of the charioteer. So I know a lot of people would think of the usual meaning for this card, which is triumph or victory. But I like the idea of mastery that's mentioned in the chapter. So in the chapter, it's mentioned about different ways to achieve the mastery. And the mastery is about the inner self. So in the chapter, the particular things that took my attention was the mastery of the inner self, and the author makes a point of saying that this is a point of achieving a goal on the path, and I kind of agree with that too. I think it is a kind of an important point of being reached on the path, so that also resonated with me. And then he goes on to talk about, that's right, he does mention the word victory, but he calls it victory gained in solitude. So that's to do with the solitude, the time spent personally in reflection. So I that resonated with me as well. And he talks about the way to achieve this in different ways. And I'm going to go on to talk a bit more about one of the main ideas that he mentions about how to achieve this mastery of the inner self and the victory in solitude, but particularly the mastery. But another point that really caught my eye in the chapter is the author mentions that this chariot is actually stable and it's actually not in motion. So that the charioteer is actually standing in the chariot and looking outwards, looking forward. So I know that in other versions of decks, quite often the chariot is in movement. But in the Marseille and in quite a few other decks, particularly the esoteric decks, I've noticed that the chariot is not in movement, it's actually still. And the author makes a point that this stillness, this point, this kind of like a turning point in a way, but he mentions that the mastery is also to do with being able to know and to be able to set things in motion. So I really liked that point. That point resonated with me a lot. And these points resonate with me on an esoteric level, but they also resonate with me on a personal level as well. So I really liked that point about knowing when to set things in motion and to be able to. And that's all to do with mastery. The other part of the mastery that took my attention, amongst other ideas of mastery that are in here, in that chapter, is mastery through mysticism. And that also very much resonated with me. And he talks about 3 different types of mysticism, which I also like. And his definition of mysticism, he combines that with Gnostic experience as well. So it's a mystical and Gnostical experience. It is all part of leading to this mastery. So that resonates very much with me, especially at the moment where I'm very much in a point of Gnostic experience. So just to talk now about the types of mysticism that he defines or classifies in this book, in this chapter. The 3 types of mysticism, he says, one is nature mysticism. So this is interesting because normally there's like one usual type of mysticism that most people kind of know of. So the first one, he says, is nature mysticism, and he said that's to do with using plant sources, all different kinds of plants, plant sources that can lead to a kind of intoxication experience. And a lot of people would be familiar with that, whether it's using something like cannabis or magic mushrooms, the types of things that is associated with shamanism. And then the second type is, he says, is the transcendental, and that is transcending space and time, and that is to do with interacting with the higher self. So this is also like the transcendental self. And then the third type is the one that a lot of people know about, or would know about, is the kind of mysticism where there is an experience or interaction with the absolute. I'm calling it the absolute here, but he mentions the word, God, or the term of God, of course, in this book, because it's a book about Christian Hermeticism. So I also think about the absolute as well in this way. So I was taken by all of the things that I've mentioned so far, and I really liked this definition of mysticism, but also him sort of defining these three different types, and I like that because it's kind of highlighting the differences between these different types. So I hadn't seen that before. So these are some of my reflections about the Chariot, or the charioteer in particular. These are my reflections about this card and this chapter. And I really did quite enjoy browsing through the chapter and being kind of thoughtful and reflective about these particular points that I noticed in the chapter. So I actually did get a lot of benefit from doing this, and especially with this particular archetype and this particular chapter. So I wanted to talk about that particular card and particular chapter today. So they are my reflections on that particular card and chapter. So I hope you'll join me again for my next video on my tarot reflections. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.